although I don't agree with Adam Schiff, and I don't like Adam Schiff like at all. I've never liked him. I think he's an asswipe.
A political buffoon.
A political buffoon. I will say that I do agree with him in the one specific statement that he made with Ghislaine Maxwell and there not being any transparency. She literally went from like a maximum security prison to being put in a minimum security prison after the Trump administration's prosecutor talked to her with no cameras, nobody else being allowed into the room, and based off of what she told that attorney, all of a sudden she gets put in a minimum security prison.
I'm sorry, are we boring you?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm tired. Look, violence is not the answer, but violence that doesn't result in death. Maybe. Private property, for instance, if a private property says, hey, we don't want open carry or we don't want firearms on our property, they can legally do that.
Yeah.
And if you don't listen to them, they can ask you to leave.
Yeah, and a huge misconception with that is people think that because they're in a technically like a public place that it's not private property. And a lot of people make that mistake. Like they'll tell me, well, I was in a public place. Okay, where was it? And it would be a restaurant or like a hotel, and all of those things are still considered private property.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Only Lawsuits podcast. Today, we have a jam-packed episode. We're talking about a lot of very, very important stuff going on in culture and, some pretty devastating news with somebody who was recently killed. But let's get started off with the confrontation of Kash Patel and Adam Schiff at the most recent hearing. So, Mike, why don't you take this over?
So Adam Schiff, Kash Patel had an exchange roughly 3 to 4 minutes long. I think they had like a good 10 to 12 minute questioning between the two. But tensions got high pretty quickly. We watched a video of it before the episode, obviously, so everyone can kind of see what happened. Basically, Adam Schiff, California Democrat, he's also one of the people that were a big part in Russiagate and some of the other January 6th committees that the Republicans are basically saying was something that was pushed on by the Democrats to help facilitate, Biden winning or Hillary winning or whatever. Basically, this administration sees, him as one of those people, and they've been putting it out there. Well, obviously, Kash Patel is the FBI director currently under the Trump administration, and he is very MAGA. So naturally, these two were bound to get into conflict, but they had a very, very tenuous exchange where they kind of lost formalities between one another, and they were basically yelling at one another. Kash Patel basically called him a political buffoon alongside some other, respective insults. And Adam Schiff basically stood there taking it. And then he was also just, kind of talking. We watched the clip. For me, guys, what it made me want to see is obviously I've seen some of the videos from other other countries and how they deal with that sort of shit, and they'll just straight up throw hands. So, look, violence is not the answer, but violence that doesn't result in death. Maybe.
Are you talking about just like political discourse, like in like parliament and stuff?
Yeah, like look, and we talked about this briefly. Here's my thing. If we could solve this term limits issue, we can solve a lot of things if we basically elect people to Congress and to the Senate and the House of Representatives based on not only what they want to do for the constituents, but also their ability to fight one another.
Well, I agree with you, but let's talk about what the confrontation was about.
Hold on, let's explore. Wait, before we go more serious, let's just explore that little flower there.
I think it would definitely be funny, like having a Congressman Olympics.
This is not celebrity death match.
Why not?
But we're basically halfway there.
No,
we're basically halfway there. Trump's the president.
Yeah.
That's true.
Listen, think about it. Would you, as a voter, let's say Nancy Pelosi, or would you sit there and vote for Nancy Pelosi to be your representative, knowing that like New York went and got Mike Tyson to represent them.
Well, look. My take on it is that they're all full of
100%.
They're all full of shit.
Yeah.
Republicans and Democrats. If
Yeah.
we throw in the fact that there is the stipulation, or there is the
Talk shit, get hit.
yeah, talk shit, get hit. if there is like even like the slightest what's the word that I'm looking for, reason that there will be a physical confrontation between people of like the opposing parties, maybe they'll come up with better policies.
You mean like to like take it outside?
Yeah. If my policy, if I want to stand by my policy, I got to know that, hey,
No, like,
I got to know how to throw hands.
here's the thing, right? So like one of the biggest problems I have is when they're trying to pass legislation in Congress, they'll go and throw in these random things like, oh, we want to save the cows. We're going to make a motion to, put this petition and this bill, whatever.
Yeah.
Totally unrelated. Well, I'd be like I'd want my representative to call out that person, be like, oh, you want to save the cows? Better save your ass now. Like, just beat.
Let's not forget, it's not outside the realm of possibility, because it used to be that if congressmen or politicians were having a disagreement,
Used to have a duel.
they used to have a duel.
Aaron Burr.
Aaron
remember
Burr
that?
killed Alexander Hamilton.
No, was it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Was that after he was the president? After, obviously, right?
Well, no, Alexander Hamilton was never president.
I don't fucking
Alexander
know.
Hamilton was never president.
Was he?
I don't think so, but
no,
I'm also not going to
what?
fact check it.
I'm gonna fact check this.
100%.
So
Alexander
anyways.
Hamilton was not president.
He might have been the secretary of
yeah,
something.
he was the
Oh,
secretary
so
of
he was
something.
he was the founding. He was
He
the
was one of the founding
father. Yeah,
fathers.
my
Yeah.
bad. My bad. My
That's
bad.
like
He was
Ben
a secretary of
Franklin.
Treasury. Yeah,
Secretary of Treasury. Yeah, and he had a disagreement
That's
with
what I
Aaron
said.
Burr.
Yeah, and that's I forgot. Aaron Burr did kill him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously, I didn't pay attention in that part of American politics.
Well, that's like people who think that Benjamin Franklin was a president just because he's on the $100 bill.
No, I know he was.
There are a lot of people that do think Benjamin
Yeah.
Franklin was
Yeah, I
president.
know he was.
based
Not
off
a
of him.
president.
Yeah.
Yeah, you buffoons. Just kidding.
I'll beat your ass right
So when we were watching that thing, I didn't really know what it was about. But if I was just watching it at like face value, not that I would agree with Kash Patel, but I felt like he won that. Because he was, and it's not even just like, oh, speaking louder, but he was more insulting, but like kind of in like almost like a professional way that I like respected it. But I now knowing what they were actually talking about, I'm kind of like, whoops, wrong
Yeah.
side.
Well, you know what's funny about this is like I'm over here being a proponent for violence, but I literally just took an ethical class from the Florida bar to like do my professionalism stuff. Every 2 years we have to do like 30 CLE credits. This session I had to do like a 2-hour course about professionalism and not beating each other's ass, because there
Very
was
nice.
in the CLE video there is a like a deposition where the opposing counsel, they literally are on video deposition, and the opposing counsel gets up and wants to beat the other attorney's ass in front of the deponent. Super unprofessional. I don't think lawyers should be allowed to fight, but you're in Congress, you're representing your people, dude.
All jokes aside, violence is never the answer, but there needs to be some sort of accountability. And I think that there is a complete lack of accountability amongst everybody serving in Congress, amongst everyone serving in the Senate. And that argument, and I need to bring this up, the reason why it just pisses me off again is that the entire confrontation happened because of the Epstein files,
yeah.
and the handling of the Epstein files. I agree with Farah. I think that Kash Patel won that little exchange with Adam Schiff, but that doesn't mean that he is not responsible for the files being released in a timely manner and not being completely transparent with the American public. Him and Dan Bongino tried to stand on business before they became a part of this administration, saying that we will be the most transparent administration ever. And when we come into our positions within the Trump administration, we are going to release the files. We're going to let you know what was happening. And all of a sudden, because Trump, quote unquote, was a part of the files, all of a sudden they started backtracking, saying that, there was never a client list. Well, there was never this. There was never that.
Well, not only that,
we can't release this.
After someone saying they literally had the list on their desk.
Yeah,
exactly.
Pam Bondi, she legitimately said, like, I have them on my desk, you know? And I think if you were gonna go through and say, I had them on my desk, to now say, oh, there is no list, I think that does create, look, as a citizen, that's the one thing I will say, like, what the fuck happened to the list? Is there a list? Was there a list? All right, let's say there isn't a list. Release whatever you've got. I want to see it all. Let me see what's there, right? And I do know, I read some things where they were talking about the prosecutor that handled the case, I think in 2013 or 2016, whenever Epstein got arrested in Florida and got offered that really sweet deal. The court sealed a bunch of documents, and I know they've been working on trying to get that unsealed, and I don't know what's going on of it. We've kind of moved on from the Epstein situation because
they're just hoping that the American public forgets about it.
Yeah, I think that is
I'll never forget.
I'll never
every episode.
I will never forget. I just think my issue is that the more they try to cover it up, the more it's become very, very apparent that there are going to be people who are going to be very, very vocal. And although I don't agree with Adam Schiff, and I don't like Adam Schiff like at all. I've never liked him. I think he's an asswipe.
A political buffoon.
A political buffoon. I will say that I do agree with him in the one specific statement that he made with Ghislaine Maxwell, and there not being any transparency. She literally went from like a maximum security prison to being put in a minimum security prison after the Trump administration's prosecutor talked to her with no cameras, nobody else being allowed into the room, and based off of what she told that attorney, all of a sudden she gets put in a minimum security prison.
I'm sorry, are we boring you?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm tired. So what are your thoughts, Adi?
I don't really have much to say. I'll be honest with you. I haven't been up to date with it.
I knew that was going to be your answer.
Yeah. So you just felt like calling me out.
Yeah, pretty much.
I will say, though, I do agree with the boxing thing. I think that would be great.
Let's see. I would much rather, like I said, if it came to a point where, to get back into the joking realm, I do think to avoid a civil war, I would like my Florida representatives to stand on business. Just saying.
Is joking, but it also brings up a more serious observation of that would maybe put some accountability back in their hands, because if you really literally need to fight for what you believe in,
dude, imagine like people from the coal miners state, right? Like,
yeah,
dude. Oh, you want to take away my ability to coal mine? Well, take this. Pop, dude. Done.
It's gonna be the Hunger Games.
It will be the Hunger Games.
Well, without killing though.
Yeah.
No, killing.
We don't. Yeah,
well,
but we don't
but
want to
like,
kill.
So how do you know they're not gonna die?
We do not support.
That is true. That is true.
Okay. All right. We put some carve outs.
Whoever's representing California they're gonna die.
Listen, I'm okay with sock and boppers.
It's gonna be like some guy on steroids and some girl who's just on Ozempic.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're gonna die when they have to go against the coal miners and the Inuits from Alaska. They're done.
Yeah.
Well, pick them better, I guess.
Florida man, they've trained.
Florida man. Let's talk about Florida.
I wish we could do a lineup of all of the Democratic senators and congressmen and Republican congressmen.
That would be a good. I wish. That would be a good video game.
See,
that would be a great video game, like a Mortal Kombat for American citizens.
Yeah.
That would be a great video game.
Imagine
the finishing move for the Florida man. It'll be like he takes an alligator and it bites your head off. Hey, listen.
That's an idea. Any video game developers watching
the
this
Florida
podcast?
woman is just going to be cracked out. Casey Anthony.
Oh, let's not even that. I can make some jokes. What's a state that's known for meth? I mean, I'm just gonna go Breaking Bad. Wasn't it like
New Mexico?
New Mexico?
Yeah, it was New
Yeah.
Mexico.
Yeah, dude, New Mexico has like a meth head that like stabs you with a crack pipe or something.
Hell yeah.
Listen, EA make the game.
EA
Not
make the
yet.
game, but we don't condone any political violence here.
Not real political violence.
Not
we
real
are
political
proponents
violence.
of video game violence.
Yeah.
But look, let's get to the next thing.
Speaking of violence.
Speaking of violence, Florida courts are back in the news. Recently, I believe it was the first DCA here in Florida, just ruled that Florida's state ban on open carrying a firearm is now unconstitutional. So, obviously there's a lot of states that allow for open carry. And for anyone that's not aware of what open carry is where you're able to exhibit a firearm on your waist, on your chest, on your back if you want. You can literally, I'm exhibiting a firearm on my waist as we speak. I have been every single day since this thing passed. But here is the
Have you
crazy.
really?
Yeah.
I haven't noticed.
Well, I just got my outer waist. I've been concealed carrying for like years, and you guys don't know, but that's my point.
You know, for the most part, we don't know.
Well, that's my point.
I don't know.
So look, the concept of open carry becoming legal. The first question I want to ask is, how does it make you feel, right? And I'm gonna ask your perspectives before I jump into the next thing. So, Adian, as a 18-year-old kid, what does it make you feel? How does it make you feel knowing you're going to walk around and possibly see regular people walking around with a gun?
I mean, I think honestly, as long as the person, has a solid head, I think it'll be great, especially with a whole bunch of people going around, crazy people going around with guns. Maybe it'll be less likely to see people that will actually do something stupid with a gun, because you can see everyone has a gun. They're like, oh, let me not do anything because I will get shot. Before it was just kind of a guess and they took a gamble. And now I'm like, for sure something's going to happen. So I think it's a good thing, honestly.
Nawaz.
That's a really valid point that I wouldn't have thought about otherwise. I actually really like that. I think firearms in general make me nervous because I don't trust other people.
Okay.
I think I don't and that doesn't mean that they may be a very responsible gun owner. They may not be a responsible gun owner. And that's the only thing that makes me nervous about it ever. So whether it's open carry or not, it's just, I think that makes me apprehensive either way about gun ownership generally. Like I told you,
Gotcha.
I would never trust my husband with a gun because he is.
We've gone hunting with Nas.
We've gone
too.
hunting with Nas. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah. So he's kind of a wild card.
Yeah.
So having, seen that, but then also knowing responsible gun ownership like you, there's two sides, and I'm terrified to only run into one type of person.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty interesting because I'm a full supporter of the Second Amendment and people being able to own firearms. I think the open carry situation just brings up the broader topic of there is the issue of mental health around the U.S. and with Florida specifically. I do think it empowers people who are able to carry their gun, but will it also enable people to now just immediately react with their firearm instead of allowing a situation to calm down, right? Because in most situations when people have a confrontation, it might end in a fist fight.
Yeah.
It might end in a really, really intense shouting match. But if you have two people who are having a very, very big disagreement and they're both carrying their firearm, will it now make them want to pull out their firearm because they quote unquote feel that their life is in danger? So it's a very, very tricky situation.
Well, the way I look at as a gun owner, I've owned guns for since I was legally able to, and prior to that, my dad exposed me to guns, from a very young age. I've been around guns since I was as early as I can remember. One of the things, and I've been a proponent for Second Amendment rights my entire life. I think the Second Amendment is one of the most important amendments of the U.S. Constitution. Now, with that being said, I do think the concept of open carry, the only reason I truly support it is I think a gun is a tool, right? A gun is no different than a wrench or a ratchet. You could take someone's life with a wrench or ratchet, and there's no ban. If you want to kill someone with something, you're gonna do it. We see it in England. We see it in all these other countries where they do have strict gun laws, all these other things. Guess what? They're fucking stabbing people with knives, right? So the only reason I was the only reason I'd say I'm a proponent for open carry is because I never thought there should have been a restriction on that to begin with. Now, as a result of the Second Amendment being, enumerated right now, with that being said, I am also a proponent now for open carry being passed because I actually conceal carry. And the reason why I want open carry is and I did a college paper on this a long time ago where I really analyzed statistics about it, but there is the concept of deterrence, right? The more likely, what's the reason why fucking people go to school, shoot and do school shootings and fucking go to hospitals and do shootings and go to churches and do shootings? The likelihood of them running into someone with a gun is slimmer than them running into, you don't see them fucking going into police stations. There was there was one shooting at a naval base and that guy got taken out. So the likelihood of killing a lot of people, in an area that has firearms is less, it's less, right? And my theory is the benefits I see to open carry is, number one, maybe someone knowing that physically seeing someone carrying a firearm might deter them from actually starting some sort of, violent act. But more importantly, the people that are open carrying firearms are actually going to be targets for the people that want to fucking shoot them. And that gives me an opportunity as a concealed carrier to take out the actual threat, right? So I look at it as, from a strategical point of view, is, listen, if you're dumb enough to open carry, which as of right now I am, but I'm on my private property in my office, I don't plan on walking out the doors and walking down Main Street with my goddamn firearm because I know it makes me a target. Mm-hmm. Needless to say, I did buy, just as a lawyer, as someone that is a Second Amendment advocate, I'm going to go out there and show, look, this is a right you can do. There are limitations. You can't take it into certain buildings, like federal buildings, so on and so forth, schools. There's still a lot of restrictions in places where you can do it. And even if we talked about this earlier, Farah, private property, for instance, if a private property says, hey, we don't want open carry or we don't want firearms on our property, they can legally do that.
Yeah.
And if you don't listen to them, they can ask you to leave, right?
Yeah, and a huge misconception with that is people think that because they're in a technically like a public place that it's not private property, and a lot of people make that mistake. Like they'll tell me, well, I was in a public place. Okay, where was it? And it would be like a restaurant or like a hotel, and all of those things are still considered private property. Well,
the sidewalk on the street, that's a public place. The moment you come off that sidewalk onto an actual, person's property or property that's owned by a physical owner, and there's no easements that allow you to go there or whatever, you run into the issue of where that property owner can tell you and restrict your ability on what you do on their property. So,
do you think that with open carry now being something that Florida residents are going to be able to utilize, do you think that there is a chance of it escalating police force against people who are open carrying?
What's funny? I actually spoke to a former police officer about this. And he was actually very supportive of it because you know why? I think it at least gives them the ability to validate a threat as well. Mm-hmm. And I think that was kind of the perspective I got from him. And he's like, look, I've never been uncomfortable around anyone with a gun. I don't mind it. Right. I think at the end of the day, I see it as a benefit because we see this whole concept of, we talked about this before, police brutality, racism, stuff like this. You know, we talked about these sorts of things. Well, listen, open carry is open carry, regardless of your skin color, regardless of, you know, your economical class. I think it's the best way to showcase, look, this is a right that everyone enjoys. So, you know, I personally think I don't want to say it's like a good way to keep the police in check, because I'm not a proponent of, like, you know, using violence against the police, but I think people open carrying around police will ultimately help them kind of garner a little bit more respect for one another, because at the end of the day, there's a lot of police that are openly supportive of this. I think, you know, I saw some sheriffs posted some social media videos. They were supportive of it. And it is a very good right. You know what I'm saying?
Well, that might also be because in their personal lives, outside of their professional lives, they might want to still open carry after having, like, you know, experienced that and being in dangerous situations.
Yeah.
So they probably want to be able to protect themselves in their private lives.
That's a good point, because when they're off duty,
exactly.
they don't have the ability to open carry.
But I could see how it could be helpful in their professional lives as well, as having watched, like, police videos like a bunch of times. That way they don't have to question as much, like, is this person armed or not, when they have to, like, you know, when they have to go through their pockets and all of that stuff to find out if they have any weapons on them or anything, especially when people are being detained.
And I will say, you know, the one point that you did bring up that I can see that perspective of is the reason why a lot of these officers get into trouble is because they're forced to make these split-second decisions on whether or not someone is armed.
Yeah.
So if, like, someone's, like, lifting up their shirt or just going into their pocket, or even, you know, going into their glove compartment, they get a lot of flack, and there's a lot of criticism, you know, thrown their way when they do pull out their gun, because they don't have the time to react. So now that they know that someone's carrying, maybe it will help to de-escalate situations.
Yeah. And look, I have been carrying guns forever. And I legitimately, every time I've gotten pulled over and I have a firearm on me, you don't have to tell the police, hey, I have a gun. I do it as a sign of respect. And 99% of the time, when I say, hey, I have a firearm, it's here, it's loaded, you know, they're like, hey, thank you for letting me know that. And it automatically, like, builds a level of respect.
That's
with
not always the case, because I've seen videos where someone says that and then automatically the police thinks it's a threat. I literally watched a video where that happened to someone.
I mean, I don't.
I mean, I can understand.
You're the right shade of brown for that to have happened to you, so I'm very surprised.
Well,
that was met with respect.
In the springtime, I'm a little bit lighter because I'm not in the sun as much. So I do only try to get pulled over in the colder months.
Makes sense.
But you know, one of the big things that I wanted to touch base with in regards to the next thing we were talking about was obviously the Charlie Kirk shooter was caught. You know, me, Tremont, and Audie did a video, which will probably come out way before this one, you know, where we talk about kind of our reactions to the Charlie Kirk shooting. And to sum it up, in a sense, we don't condone violence, right? We don't condone violence, especially in a situation of disagreement, verbal disagreement, right? We as lawyers and what we do for business, we are verbally in disagreement with other people all the time. We shouldn't lose our lives and or be harmed as a result of a verbal disagreement. Now, I know that contradicts everything we started this episode
contrary to our first segment.
But, you know, realistically, that was all joking. This is us being serious. Violence against another person for words do not constitute violence. And the diversity of thought is one of the most important foundations of this country in civilized society. I think that's what separates us from the world, realistically. And that's what a lot of people come to America and they see in our political system is the freedom of you know, religion, freedom of expression, freedom of speech. Those are like the crux of things that people enjoy. Because in a lot of countries, they don't have that. But now that the Charlie Kirk shooter's been shot, we've become more and more aware of some of the facts behind what's happened and when he was caught, right? So some real big facts that have stuck out to me, and you guys can jump in, when you get a chance, that have stuck out to me on this thing was, it is a very weird case in where a father had to turn his own son in, and the father was actually, I believe, a police officer or a sheriff. He turned his own son in because he recognized him from the FBI footage. Not only that, there was also it came to light that I guess he was in a relationship. The shooter was in a relationship with his transgender roommate that was transitioning from male to female. There were some text messages released where he basically, said that he did it purportedly. We don't know if I don't know if they've been authenticated. And what's funny is they had a lot of, romantic things in the text messages, like him calling the roommate my love and blah, 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 blah. Which is natural for people that are in a relationship with one another, right? I tell Josh I love you all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
I love you too, bro.
But realistically, what the big things that stuck out to me are when Charlie Kirk got shot, it was literally about transgender. He was asked a question about being transgender. And in the text messages that got released, the purported shooter, I think his name is Tyler Robinson or something like that. He specifically, he was in a transgender relationship, and he also, the subject matter of the messages indicated he couldn't tolerate the hate that Charlie Kirk was spewing. So obviously, those are some crazy facts that have come to light about this. And, I wanted to pick your brains on what you thought about this situation, the shooter, and how this is playing out in front of us. What is it? Does the issue of him being in a transgender relationship, impact, whether or not he was justified in his shooting at all? Which
there was no fucking justification.
Yeah.
There was no justification.
And what are your thoughts on it, Adi?
Well, like you said, we already talked about this briefly, but again, I think, like Josh said, no justification whatsoever to shoot Charlie Kirk, especially only because he had a different opinion than yours.
Yeah.
And I think it's sad. And it's even sadder how people are celebrating Charlie Kirk's death just because, again, different political opinion. I just think it's crazy. I don't know.
Far.
I think it's especially important as legal professionals too, that we say that we don't condone that type of stuff, because sometimes we have to, defend people in those types of situations, when bad things happen or when their crimes are committed against certain groups of people, and to protect people's rights. But I'm going to agree that there's no justification for that. I know a lot of people have been harmed and hurt by things that he said. And I mean, two wrongs doesn't make a right.
Yeah.
So, him having died doesn't suddenly take away the pain and the hurt that he caused by the words and, stuff that he was spewing a lot of. And I know a lot of the people quote unquote celebrating are also I was talking to a friend yesterday, and they had made a point that, he used to speak a lot against single mothers, and now his wife is a single mother.
Yeah.
And so it's really hard to see those types of things. I actually had no idea who this guy was before the shooting. First of all, I'm sure I saw him on some political pundit stuff, but yeah, I never saw him. But afterwards, there's been a lot of clips released about, things about him, and granted, I didn't think he was all that, but there's a lot of people who have importance to a lot of people, and any person's life shouldn't be cut short because of someone else's decision.
You made a really important point before we jump on to Josh. You made a really important point as a legal professional, and I want to before Josh gets in with his perspective, I want to ask you this. Do you think he should have competent legal counsel? Adi?
Yeah. I still think he deserves the right to a fair trial.
And the reason I asked Audie in particular is because obviously we know the answer that we're going to probably say, right? But more importantly, that's also the cornerstone of American values is even though, he did this, or even though it's alleged that he did this, because we don't know if he did it. There are some carve outs, that those text messages will kind of, if they are authenticated, he does have the right against self-incrimination, right? He does have the right to remain silent. Those are the Miranda rights that get read to him when he gets arrested. But let me tell you what fucks you, the rules of evidence, which indicate that, there's an exception to hearsay if you shoot a text and say, hey, I did it, right? So I think ultimately that's going to be what fucks him down the line. But look, even if he did do it, I still think as a lawyer, I wouldn't want to be his lawyer. But if I had to be his lawyer, I would do my job and give him the most competent, even if I disagree with what he did. And I think that's the craziest thing is as lawyers, we're constantly put in that position where we have to do and say things that we may not disagree with, but that's what our calling is. That's what our job is. And that's what the American system calls for, right?
Yeah.
So,
to protect people's rights no matter what, because nothing necessarily should strip you of those rights unless you've been convicted. And then there's certain things that you're not allowed to do.
that's the weirdest for me. Like when I'm looking at it from that perspective now, it's like, look, he is in a sense killed Charlie Kirk purportedly, based on his disagreement with Charlie Kirk, right? Why is he even pleading not guilty? Like he should just own up to it. Because listen, if you killed him for disagreement, well, he shouldn't even get the right to fair trial by his same concept. You know what I'm saying? He should have just been shot dead right there.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the biggest hypocritic I've ever seen in my life. If you ask me, from my perspective now. So Josh, shoot.
Look,
Not shoot people.
yeah, not shoot people, but I don't know. I was pretty taken aback by it. It affected me a lot that day because I remember we were talking about it at the office that he had gotten shot, and then I had left for the rest of the afternoon, and then one of my close friends, he texted me the video, and to see the graphicness of it, like someone being shot in the neck like that, and then the blood, going everywhere. Like if you haven't watched the video, I don't recommend watching it.
Also, I was sent the video by these folks without a trigger warning.
Yeah.
So
and it was I don't know, it really affected me emotionally. I think we live in a society nowadays where attention spans are so short. So it's very easy to demonize someone by short clips that you see on the internet. And while I didn't agree with everything that Charlie Kirk said, there was a lot that I did agree with him on. Yeah. And you have to watch the long form conversations that he had with people. And I want to really emphasize the word conversations, because a lot of times we live in a bubble. I think a lot of people in society are a part of like these echo chambers now, where they don't want to have a conversation with anybody that has any different beliefs than them.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's one thing that I love about like our social circle, even like our firm, right, and the people that we interact with. We're all from different ends of the political spectrum, but we can have conversations about our differences. And like I said, Charlie had very specific beliefs, but the fact that he was willing to converse with other people and have long dialogues with them and trying to get what their perspectives are. I think that's something that society lacks.
Yeah.
And for him to be murdered in cold blood like that, and then for people to celebrate the death is heinous, man. The guy was he was a father of 2 kids. And I don't know. It really opened my eyes. And another thing that I want to say is that I think it's very, very easy to politicize things and say that, Tyler Robinson killed him, and now it's like the woke left.
Yeah.
And it's because he had a transgender partner. But then a topic that I will bring up is when Minnesota Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband were brutally murdered inside of their own home by a quote unquote conservative, somebody on the extreme right. This administration didn't bat an eyelash, right? And I think ultimately the politicization of these deaths is not what moves the country forward.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's mental health. It's the fact that these people feel that because they feel like they're not being heard, that they need to kill the person that has the loudest voice in the room is what I think is the underlying issue here.
But they're also still not really listening to the person who, I want to say the guy who shot him, because technically, like, they were expecting something completely different.
Yeah.
You know, when they had the press conference and the guy openly was like, "Yeah, I didn't think it was going to be one of our own," and then there's no accountability.
No
You know
accountability.
what I mean? As soon as it's someone like a person of color, as soon as it's someone who even when we had the shooter for the school that was transgender, it was still like there's not enough time spent on like who the person is when they find out it's one of ours. Because what exactly do you mean by that? One of ours, like.
Well, I
An
think
American citizen,
I
white
think in
person?
that context, no. I believe I know what you're talking about. You're talking about the governor of Utah or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think he was indicating that it was like, I believe the context of that comment was based off of it being someone that was from Utah. But
it's still a really, really weird,
weird-
way.
yeah,
to
It is a
put
weird way to
something.
communicate it.
Because when you're taking ownership of someone, I feel like that's like, okay, it's just vague and weird. Like, I feel like he worded it very strangely.
it was.
Yeah.
There was a lot of weird in the way this was handled. I think
And the
from a
FBI,
PR.
and sorry to interject, man, the FBI dropped the ball. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think they had anything to do with the capture of Charlie Kirk. The way that they handled that investigation, from the very beginning, I think it could have been handled way better. I mean, Kirk ended up 250 miles away, as far as I know from what I've read, from...
You mean the shooter?
Yeah. So the shooter of Charlie Kirk, Tyler Robinson, ended up 250 miles away from where the shooting took place, and it was his father who turned him in.
Yeah.
But
Right?
here's why I will disagree with you a little bit. Is because FBI is obviously a federal office, right? It was, in my personal opinion, the reason why the FBI did drop the ball in their ability to, capture the shooter as quickly as possible, it's because the local police and law enforcement was not there adequately to do countermeasures to give the FBI. Because, like, FBI's in Washington. They're not, 90% of them aren't in Utah. The moment that hit the fan, everyone obviously flew there. But ultimately, and this is something that, I've been thinking about, that event only had 6 police officers. An event with over 3,000 people.
Which is crazy.
Only had 6 police officers. And that is where I think not only I think the main person that's responsible for the death of Charlie Kirk is actually the school, because they inadequately allowed that many people to gather with a little security presence.
And this is the second time in a row that the shooter was on a rooftop. Man.
Here's the thing, man. Like,
I have a hot take for that. I think the reason why it happened, I think Charlie Kirk is the reason why Charlie Kirk got shot. Like, and not to say that should be any reason for anyone, but it's like, if you're going to be this type of person who hyper politicizes their entire career without actually going into politics, but you're this influencer and you have all of these really, really like hot takes and views and not even just conservative, just controversial views on things. And you're constantly inviting people. And I know to your point, you said, Josh said that, you know, he was having conversations. He wasn't really listening in a lot of the things. It was more so he was talking over those people. And so I know he upset a lot of people. And again, not that that's an excuse, but he wasn't like, he was a very political person.
Yeah, I'll agree with you. I mean, look, ultimately his actions caused, you know, the reaction. But when as a lawyer, I'm looking at it from a liability perspective.
Yeah.
And one of the things we always do is we find who's liable, right?
Negligent security.
This is and I looked up, I'm not a Utah lawyer, but they do have negligent security. And I will tell you what, man, I think this is one of those situations where the school allowed and assumed that risk of having a highly politicized individual on their campus. They should have known the possibility of people getting harmed was great. Because look, let's say take out the shooting. You know there's tension there. You know, especially in this country right now.
What if a fight had broken out?
What if a fight had broken out?
Well, especially because they were on a college campus.
And there's kids there. I'm not talking about college kids. I'm talking about like little kids.
Yeah.
Charlie Kirk's kids were there. So who's to say a fight breaks out, you know, tensions get high, and someone can get stabbed, you know? So it's one of those things where it's like you as the college should have known. You own that property. You should be able to ascertain risk. I know you can have security. Why wasn't there, you know, more adequate security measures? Why were people able to access the rooftops?
You know? I think the sad irony is that a few years ago, he came out saying that as a supporter of the Second Amendment,
some people may die.
That some people may die. That gun deaths are going to take place, but those quote unquote need to happen. And I'll play the actual quote or the what he actually said in order for us to have the Second Amendment. And that's the sad irony, is that with him saying that, he was one of those deaths. So
I don't think he expected that.
And I don't think he expected. I mean, of course he didn't expect it, but
ultimately, look, the fact of the matter is simple. People, open carry is now law, for instance. I anticipate an uptick in, you know, armed combat. I do anticipate a statistic, but it's kind of one of those things where this shit's going to play out and it'll level out eventually. It's just like, you know, it's just, this is the way it is. Yeah. You know, sadly, this is how it is. And even if we can't ban guns, there's no way we can ban guns without literally disrupting the entire country. We can't take back the fact that guns are there. Every country that tries, they ultimately fail, you know? So we have more guns than we have citizens in this country. We have to deal with it, and people are going to lose their life, whether it's political influencers, whether it's, you know, people, regular people, you know, we sadly, I think it's one of those things where we got to look at it as we need to kind of get a gun and try to protect ourselves from other people with guns. So that's my position. That's my position on it.
And that's what makes me scared.
Well, you know what? We can go buy you a gun.
Yeah.
Listen, you walk outside, it is a risk. The guy that's, you know, catcalling you, he could have a gun. Mm. Now, I'm not saying you should respond with shooting him.
Well, but you're not saying that.
I mean, yes, I am not saying that.
Responsible gun ownership. Responsible gun ownership.
That,
you know, that's what we're trying to say. And I mean, prayers to the Kirk family and anybody affected by gun violence. You know, it's I mean, I think it's going to definitely bring up even firmer and more vocal conversations moving forward. You know, like he was a very, very big figure, you know, on the right, and you know, we'll see what happens. But that's another episode of the Only Lawsuits podcast, folks. Sorry to end it on such a somber note, but you know, to everybody tuning in, you know, thank you so much for listening. Shout out to our podcast producer, Truman, who always does such a wonderful job helping us get everything set up. Audie, thanks for joining us today, man.
Glad to be here.
And until next time.